Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, one of the civic partners for this show. Today we have Kathleen Stein in the studio with us, and Kathleen is the president of the St. Lawrence County League. Kathy, welcome back to North Country Matters. 2019 has been one of the most active legislative seasons New York State has seen in many years, and the governor continues to sign bills that were enacted during the session. In fact, the legislature sent him 935 bills, and that is a lot of legislative action, isn't it?
That's a lot of signing.
That is a lot of
signatures.
signing. And so the league is very happy about much of that new legislation, though, aren't they?
Very happy, very happy.
Yeah, it's a lot of things that had been on the back burner for many years finally made it to the floor for both houses. So voting reform has always been central to the League's mission. And let's review for folks the voting reforms that were enacted over the year, because many of these new laws are actually going to be in place for the general election on November 5th. What should voters be aware of for this fall, Kathy?
The big thing is early voting, and we're delighted that New York has finally got on board with this. But the general election is going to be the first time that we have early voting. There's 9 total days of early voting. The first day is October 26th, that's Saturday, and it goes through Sunday, November 3rd. If you want to, the hours are already, posted on the Board of Elections website. There are the only sad thing for St. Lawrence County, only one polling place, and that will be at the Board of Elections, which is in the Human Services Building on Highway 310 right here in Canton. And that's where you can find out about the hours. The League will also be distributing some new brochures about early voting, the ins and outs of it, and the hours, and we'll have those in public libraries by the end of the month, and some other locations as well. So that's the big thing. Electronic poll books are also being instituted, which will help make the early voting work much more smoothly, especially in downstate counties where they have a lot of polling places. Registration portability. Now this is supposedly already in place. When you move within the state of New York, it's only within the state, and you do a change of elections at the Postal Service.
It's a change of address.
Change of address, sorry,
yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Change of address at the Postal Service, that will be automatically communicated to the Board of Elections where you have moved. Now, until the bugs get worked out of the system, we do advise people, especially as it gets close to the election, if they move, we think that you should really also make sure you do that change of address directly with the Board of Elections as well. But that's going to be a big help to people. Consolidated primaries, again, we've already had that in New York, but going forward, just one primary for state and local primaries in June. The party enrollment deadline legislation was passed and signed for that. We think that it's supposedly going to be going into effect, and that the deadline for changing or enrolling in a party, if you didn't previously, will now be in February of in this case 2020 instead of October this year. I was trying to get some final confirmation from the Board of Elections here in Canton about that, and the commissioners were at a meeting of commissioners downstate, so they weren't unable to confirm that, but that change has happened. It's just not clear exactly what the date is going to be. And finally, pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-olds. And this is very nice, because when you get young people thinking about voting early, then they really tend to get excited about it and keep on voting. And the way this will work is that young people as young as 16 can pre-register, and then on their 18th birthday, they will automatically be registered, and so that they will already be done for them. So those are all very important reforms that we're very happy about.
They are, and they're long overdue in New York State. We have lagged many other states for many of these reforms, and unfortunately, for all the progress we made this year, there's still work to be done, isn't there, in order to bring New York up into 21st century voting laws that many other states already enjoy.
Yes, that's certainly true. Automatic voter registration, we were so close. But there was a typo a significant wording problem with that law, so that will be reintroduced in the next session. Also, voting rights for people on parole just got kind of shoved off the agenda, but we think that will probably happen. In the meantime, the governor has a system of pardons that he's doing for people who have fulfilled done the time in jail or whatever. And so that is sort of happening, but we really need legislation to make that.
Right, make it a more automatic process.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
So one of the perennial legislative efforts that the League and many other groups have been working on for many years has to do with equal pay. And we saw some significant additions to state employment laws that were passed and signed into law this session. The first is the salary history ban, and this bans employers from asking or relying on salary history to set pay rates. And there's a prohibition on employers paying employees less based on a broad range of characteristics besides sex if they perform substantially similar work as their colleagues. For example, you can't have a male doing janitorial work and a woman doing custodial work and have them paid for less just because you've got a different title on the name of the job. And this is something that's actually been worked on for many years, and we were happy to see that law get passed, and it will apply to all employers in the state, including public employees, and takes effect on January 6, 2020, so not that many months from now. And that equal pay for substantially similar work actually goes into effect this October on the 8th, so that one comes in even closer than the salary history ban. And again, it brings real parity to the workforce, because now you can't play around with job titles and then give less money for something that is substantially the same. So, Kathy, in another employment-related change, New York has made some sweeping changes to its sexual harassment laws, haven't they?
Yes, yes, certainly have. So these, measures, remove a long-standing provision in the law that protected employers from liability if an employee failed to file a complaint or did not follow specific reporting procedures. And what people would do, of course, was the threat of retaliation would sometimes keep people from filing a complaint, or the procedures would be kept very vague or whatever, so that employers could wiggle out of this. And the charge protects victims, of harassment who don't make a complaint because of fear of retaliation. Legislation also ends the requirement that the harassment is severe and pervasive. Again, which was causing people to put up with all kinds of things that were really not right, but that the bar was set so high that it became very problematic. And so now the standards in New York are now the most progressive, more progressive than at the federal level, and more so than many other states. So it's, this is really great progress.
And unfortunately, what we've seen, particularly at the federal level, is the rollback of many kind of provisions that were in place and have been loosened now. And so it makes where you live, really, you're subject to you can be subject to a lot of harassment, but not here in New York. So that's good progress for us. And after 8 years of pushing for Aaron's Law, the New York State finally becomes the 37th state to require sexual abuse education in public schools. This bill, just signed last week, changes education law, requiring public schools, kindergarten through 8th grade, to teach a course on preventing child sexual abuse. Parents and teachers are also given additional tools on how to recognize the signs and talk to children about this issue. And this is really important because many times kids who are in an unsafe situation at home do find that they establish a good relationship with a teacher or some other trusted individual in school. And this gives schools much better tools for being able to help those kids who are in an unsafe situation at home. And in terms of domestic violence legislation overwhelmingly passed in both houses to help survivors of domestic violence, to ensure they won't be jeopardizing their employment when they attempt to rebuild their lives. And the new law requires employers to give victims time off to seek medical attention, get counseling, go to legal and victim aid services, appear in court, or participate in safety training. Employees should provide reasonable advance notice, but they can miss work without warning if there are justifiable circumstances, and sometimes things crop up that no one can anticipate. So that's important.
Yes, very important. And related, domestic violence related, Governor Cuomo signed a bill that criminalizes what's come to be known as revenge porn. And the measure creates a misdemeanor charge for so-called revenge porn, and includes a provision that would allow a victim to seek restitution in civil court. The governor remarked that our laws have not kept pace with technology, and how abusers can use it to harass, intimidate, and humiliate intimate partners. Unquote. The new law makes the distribution of revenge porn punishable for up to a year in prison, and allows victims to bring cases in civil courts, as I mentioned before. So this is, this is something really addressing something that has become a major problem.
And so often our laws do lag behind our technology in so many ways. So this is a good step forward for New York. Another area where we saw real progress this year was in gun safety. Statistics show that states with strong handgun safety laws have fewer gun violence-related deaths and injuries. And New York legislators passed a number of bills in this area. What got signed into law this year, Kathy?
Well, first of all, strengthening the safe storage laws. Specifically addressing locations where children live, visit, or have anticipated access to try to, eliminate or cut down on the horrible, tragic accidents that can happen when children get playing with guns. Legislation that criminalizes the manufacture, sale, transport, and possession of firearms and major components of such weapons that are undetectable by metal detectors. And this includes 3D printed guns. Talk about trying to catch up with technology.
That's right.
Here's a major issue. And also legislation that prevents K through 12 schools from authorizing anyone other than a security officer, a school resource officer, or a law enforcement officer, properly trained people, in other words, from carrying a firearm on school grounds. And some states have permitted teachers, other personnel who claim to be trained to carry guns into schools, and with tragic results.
Exactly, tragic results. Speaking of education laws, another new law which affects schools limited the religious exemptions for vaccinations. New York has been the epicenter of the nation's measles outbreak this year, and we joined a handful of other states that no longer allow exemptions based on religious grounds, including California, Arizona, West Virginia, Mississippi, and Maine. And in fact, just last week, a state Supreme Court judge upheld the law in New York that ends the religious exemption for vaccinations, and that had been challenged by a court case. And Judge Janice Hartman called preventing the spread of disease unquestionably a state interest. And in fact, school starts tomorrow here in New York for many places, and there will be kids who will not be going to school because their families chose not to get them these routine vaccinations that prevent the transmission of disease. And so often it's people who are they might be, for example, a cancer patient in the family who is very vulnerable because of a suppressed immune system. Somebody comes in with the measles and that person is very seriously affected. So these aren't just about keeping kids safe in school, these are about keeping a lot of vulnerable people safe out in society. It's very important.
Yeah, exactly. An important area of advocacy for the League is the environment, and there was some important new environmental legislation that was passed. The Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, CLCPA, which many of our viewers may have already heard about, but is intended to address and mitigate the effects of the climate crisis by drastically cutting greenhouse gases, shifting the state's energy reliance to renewable sources, and creating green jobs to promote environmental justice across the state. This bill is the most comprehensive and aggressive climate change legislation in the nation. So, you know, as I say, for the League, which has long-standing positions on, you know, fighting pollution and environmental protection, and now, you know, calling for action on climate change, this is a real landmark.
It's very important, and September is nationally National Preparedness Month, and it's one of the reasons is because it's the start of the hurricane season. And as we are watching, even as we're taping this, Hurricane Dorian is sitting off the coast of Florida and Georgia, just having brought devastation to the Bahamas. And this is the largest storm that's ever been recorded. It's the slowest moving storm that's ever been recorded, and we have no idea how much damage will be done from those rains and those winds. But New York is taking the lead on thinking about these climate actions now, because we are facing a climate crisis all across the globe, and we can no longer put our heads in the sand, can we?
We cannot, we cannot.
So as we round out today's show, Kathy, what is the local league working on for the fall? We got some busy a busy calendar, don't we?
We do. First of all, National Voter Registration Day is September 24th this year, and it's always 6 weeks ahead of the general election. And the league is one of the National League is one of the, not the baseball National League, the National League of Women Voters is one of the sponsors of this. And so we're going to be having voter registration activities on the SUNY campuses, both SUNY Canton and SUNY Potsdam. Also, there will be activities at St. Lawrence University, our organization that we partner with there. The Andrew Goodman Foundation is going to be doing registration on National Voter Registration Day. We're also going to be distributing our 2019 voter guides.
Yes, we have one right here.
And we have one here.
So.
And they have information, general information about voting and about the election. Also about the new voting laws, that we have briefly talked about here. And also we'll be distributing those early voting information brochures that I mentioned. And they have sort of general information but also a county-specific insert that has the times and whatnot. So that's another way to learn more about that. We're also doing conversations with candidates again. Donna will be hosting those. We have invited 8 candidates, and 7 have scheduled conversations. We have candidates for Canton Village Board, Potsdam Village Board, and
Potsdam Town Council. Potsdam Town Council.
Sorry.
Right.
And also
the county clerk. The two county clerk
candidates are both on board. So.
And even though there is only one person running for the county sheriff, it is an open seat this year, and we've invited that candidate to come in and talk to us to explain what the work that the county sheriff does, because many people don't really know much about how that department runs. So we thought it was a great voter education moment. And one of the things that we've learned over the years is that you don't learn much about candidates or their positions in the debate format, because it's so restrictive that the 2-minute answer, the 30-second response really don't allow for much more than a soundbite. But sitting down with a candidate for half an hour and having a conversation gives you a lot of information about who that person is, how they view the job, and what they think the issues are. So.
Yes, those are some of the best things that we do, I think,
right.
are those conversations with candidates. And certainly we can tell that they get quite a few views from local voters as well.
They do, so it's something that voters seem to really appreciate. And Kathy, 2019 and 2020 are significant anniversaries for the League of Women Voters here in New York State, aren't they? Tell us more.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Of the centennial year of the League of Women Voters of New York State, November 19th, 2019. And by the way, the New York State League was the very first league formed, so we're rather proud of that. The League of Women Voters, as a national organization, was founded on February 14th, of Valentine's Day, on 2020, and will be the centennial of that. Also, the centennial, very, very significant for the League and for all women, I think. Centennial of the 19th Amendment being ratified August 18th, 2020, so I'm sure there will be activities surrounding that. And then the certification of the 19th Amendment is August 26th, 2020. So.
And August 26th is always National Women's Day as well, because it was created around the anniversary of women getting the right to vote. So those are all important anniversaries, and of course it was actually in 2017 that New York State women got the 100th anniversary of the right to vote. So we were one of the leading states doing that, created the first league. Nationally, the league was created the next year, so there's a lot to be proud of here in New York State, isn't there?
There is.
So Kathy, let's remind folks how they can join the league, and in particular, let's, since the college are just back in session, let's remind college students that there's a special price for them, isn't there?
That's right, that's right. College students can join the league for $10, the League of Women Voters of St. Lawrence County. And you can join, people can visit our website and join online. Also, there's contact information there for me, and if people want to contact me, I will send you a paper form if you're old school and want to join that way.
Nothing wrong with being old school, is there?
No, the league is almost 100 years old, and you know,
that's
feeling
right.
feisty.
That's yes, exactly, and always looking for people who want to participate, and in our voter education and our other activities. So thank you for coming in today. This is actually the 4th time we've talked about new laws in New York State, and the governor continues to sign them. So we may have to squeeze in one more show before the end of 2019 to talk about what's new and exciting in New York State. So I appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Donna.
So these conversations are a production of North Country Matters, which is filmed here in the Fred W. Cleveland Computer Center of the Potsdam Public Library. These shows are a civic collaboration between the League of Women Voters of St. Lawrence County and the Potsdam Public Library. Remember, until next time, our North Country Matters. Kathy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna.